I don't know if you remember, if any of you are old enough to remember Hurricane Gilbert. At that time, the majority of the homes in Jamaica were made from board and had a zinc roof, or a roof that wasn't very strong from a structural perspective. So it was no surprise that I think it was 80% of the homes lost their roofs. Now, at the time, I was living in a little old board house, and we already had a leaky roof, had a roof with a lot of holes. Wow, look at this house. Look at this house. It's split apart. Mm-hmm. I can't even show you guys because it's in somebody's yard, so I couldn't even show you. But the house is basically split apart, like something fell in between and break it apart. But as I was saying, back then, we were living in a house with the roof had a lot of holes in it, but that became the norm for us. We'd have to use pots and pans to catch the water when it was raining a lot. The floor was also slowly deteriorating. I'm sure you know now, I was born into very humble beginnings in rural St. James, Jamaica. So the house was already compromised, and let me tell you, when Hurricane Gilbert, which hit us at I believe it was a category 3 or category 4 when it hit us, honey. 4. I think it was a category 4, but whatever category it was, because the infrastructure on the island was not where it is today, it destroyed most of the houses. I was certain, however, that our house would be destroyed because of how fragile it was. And I want to tell you that my grandmother was alive back then, and she put down a piece of prayer. I mean, she just started to pray and to talk to God and ask for a miracle, because I swear it was a miracle why our house was saved and our neighbor's house was saved. But when it came to the eye of the hurricane and we walked around our community and we saw how many families had lost their homes completely, or the roofs were blown off, and here's the thing, a lot of people came back with us. People were living with us in our little 2-bedroom board house, which already about 8 of us lived in there, right? I mean, in my room we had 2 beds, probably about 6 of us sharing the 2 beds. I can't remember exactly, but with more people coming in, because their houses were compromised. But it's that kind of community where there's no way we would have left people outside, even if we have to make bed on the floor. And after the eye of the hurricane passed and people came back to our house with us, the second half was just so terrible. It was frightening. I tell you, I still have post-traumatic stress disorder from Gilbert, which it actually influenced some of the decisions I made in my life later on as it pertains to how I built the first house that I built. I built it with Gilbert in mind, making sure it had a slab, 100% slab roof, French windows which had metal in between or wood in between, so it's not easily compromised. Every consideration was as a result of the experience from Gilbert. But the house stood up to the test of Gilbert. And yes, after Gilbert was done, it was very shaky. Let me show you some of this roadway here. It was very shaky after Gilbert was done, understandably so, and with more people in there. Of course, it's even more shaky, but you know what? God spared us and spared several of our neighbors. There were no deaths in our community despite the devastation. And, it's just an experience that you learn from, but you don't want it to happen again. And here's my fear. They have said that Beryl has made history because it's the first hurricane of this magnitude to hit anywhere in June. Basically, there's never been a hurricane to hit in June. Take a look at this roadway here. So you can tell that here was blocked up. It's a little bit clearer now, but definitely there was a lot of blockage here. They have done some work. We're at White House actually, so we are in Westmoreland indeed, and we're passing Sandals, South Coast. So at least that gave us some inclination of where we are, which is good. But as I was saying, going back to Gilbert and the fact that Beryl is the first hurricane, I should say, to hit in June, which is a record. So there are a few things happening in my mind. This is a leap year. And if you follow, the calendar and things like that, it's been said historically that leap years, a lot of unfortunate things happen. And I was born in a leap year, so I've checked leap years since then. And I share in my book where, when I was in Ghana in the market, this lady had told me that I'm a dragon. In Chinese zodiac, my sign is a dragon, and there are certain characteristics that go with people who fall under the dragon sign. But one thing she said to me that was so profound, and I didn't believe in these things back then, until I met this lady and then I started to do the research. She said to me that with dragons, on their 12th year, every 12 years of their life, something amazing happens. And she challenged me right there in the market in Ghana, Africa. And she said, what happened when you were 12 years old? And I told her that all I remember is tragedy. And I told her that that's the year that Hurricane Gilbert came, almost destroyed my house. And she said, almost. It didn't, because with a leap year and with your dragon sign or your Chinese dragon zodiac sign, in that time, just before you experience the greatness that comes with your 12th year or every 12 years of your life, there's usually some unfortunate circumstances that precede. And it's funny because when she challenged me in that market and said to me, what happened when you were 12 years old? I said, Gilbert. She said, no, think again. Something has happened. And guess what I remembered? Back then we used to do a particular exam in Jamaica that you would need to pass to be able to matriculate into high school. For those of you who are Jamaican and old enough, you remember the common entrance exam. Now, I went to Springfield All-Age School, which is a rural school where each year, out of our 2 grade 6 classes and some even grade 5 students, we'd probably have 40, maybe 60 students sitting the exam. We'd have 5 persons, 5, maybe 6, very small amounts, matriculate to go to traditional high schools, which was the thing, right? That year, that 12th year after Hurricane Gilbert, I was actually getting ready to go to Mount Alvernia High, which I was one of 6 students that year who matriculated to high school from a group of over 40-something or 50-something students that took the exam. And she said, was that a major accomplishment for you? It was a huge accomplishment for me and my family, because I was the first person in our family that was going to that or that level of high school. And again, it was a traditional high school. It was a Catholic school. So I remember it being a huge accomplishment. And she said, okay, what happened 12 years after that? And I thought about it. And I remembered tragedy first, because I lost someone who was dear to us. But then she said, think about it. That's the year I got promoted to a manager in a US Fortune 500 company. My salary had increased dramatically. I was now making, with a compensation package, close to 6 figures. This was before I became a VP. I got a company car. The company had put me up as a part of that compensation package into an apartment. My rental allowance was $3,000 US. This is many, many, many years ago. So you can only imagine back then, how big this compensation package was to me from somebody who was born into humble beginnings. Excuse me. And she said, at the time, I hadn't experienced my 12th year yet, which would mean my 36th year of life. Because when I went to Ghana, I was a vice president and I was in charge of the operations for ACS, which was the company at the time in Accra, in Ghana. So I had to visit regularly because that location reported up through me and my organization. So I was there visiting and I decided to go to the market, which is where I met this lady. And she said, on the next 12th year of your life, something remarkable is going to happen again. And I came back to Jamaica and I started to do some research about Chinese zodiacs, how they work, what is the sign of the dragon, what it means. And again, I'm not big on believing a lot of these things, but trust me, it turned me into a believer, because here's the thing. The 36th year of my life, which was the next 12 years, based on the lady, again, I had a huge positive change. I took a new job where I started a new company. I was able to increase my earnings. I met my husband. I bought a he says my current husband, guys. We found, invested in a lot of property. Just a lot of good things happened in that 12 years. Well, here's the thing. 2024 is this next 12 year of my life. So this year now I'm going to be 48 years old, and this is my 12th year. And again, as she said, the tragedy comes, but you overcome it, and then there's the greatness. And I just went through some amount of tragedy with my extended family. It's a private matter right now, still being investigated, so I'm not going to share the details here. But this lady continues to be right, and it leads me to think that there's so much more to this than I would have thought. And I don't want to believe it, but then how can you challenge the reality of the fact that everything she said has happened like clockwork, right? So going back to Beryl and it being a leap year and things happening, people saying that bad things happen on a leap year, I've started to believe that, because Gilbert came on a leap year, right? And bad things do happen in a leap year based on my experience. But you tell me in the comments if that's been your experience as well. So I say all of that to say this. Beryl is here in June, which is earlier than any other hurricane in history. I'm concerned about what's gonna come as it pertains to hurricanes and disasters for the rest of this year. So I'm saying this to say, be careful, be prepared, don't take anything for granted. If you experienced severe damages from this hurricane or no damages at all, don't go into the next one having not learned the lessons and then go in like you're oblivious to what's gonna happen, and then say, oh, and feel sorry and have regrets. No, just put the things in place. Beryl to me is the warning of what's to come. Let's bond together as much as we can. Let's put what we need to put in place, and let's be prepared to ride out the rest of this year together and as best as is possible. This is the food place, right?
Is it?
Isn't this the food place that we're supposed to stop?
Fruits.
This is fruits?
Mm-hmm.
I thought we were going to stop here, honey. Jerk, pork and stuff. Remember, we're hungry, It's okay, keep going, because they didn't stop. So they must have something else in mind. We're still traveling behind our friends. They're piloting us. So that's that. I think this video is long enough. Let me end this one, and I'll keep recording and probably start another one if I see anything.